Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. So, yeah, the mysterious stranger is Jeff Kripal. We are blessed with his voice, not his image. Well, that works okay. So this little get together was just for three friends who just have a little chat. Nothing formal. We all put our pants on one leg at a time. Well, never mind. I was going to make a joke out of that. And
I'm curious to hear it, but it's up to you.
Well, there's the whole thing. It's like if there's a fire, would you rather have both pant legs on halfway, but then you're not very mobile, but and if you put your pants on one leg at a time, then at least you can hop.
Yeah,
anyway,
but if there's a fire, I'm not wearing any pants. So just let's be clear, okay?
Oh, we really didn't need to go there.
Sorry.
So Kev,
yeah.
What do you want
go
to
ahead,
talk
Mike.
I'm happy to talk about anything.
Actually, I do want to give you a couple questions. Jeff, it's not like we don't ever talk to each other. But yeah, I've heard you mention you're working on 3 books about physics and the superhumanities, basically. I haven't heard you say much about it, though. Is there anything you want to share about that? That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't say much about it because it's so overwhelming. I mean, they're sitting right here. I have 3 of these manuscripts sitting on my desk, but
you're that far, really?
Yeah, they're the first one's basically done, and the second and the third one are about 2/3 written, but that doesn't mean they're 2/3 written. That probably means they're a fourth written, And it's on physics and evolutionary biology and basically astronomy or eschatology or cosmology, however you want to put the meaning of the universe. And it's basically the basic idea is that science is really the definer of our worldview today. And so what do people's anomalous experiences look like today? How are they framing them in terms of science, and how is the science responding or not? So there's actually a large literature on physics and mystical experience that I'm trying to wrangle together in this first volume. It's called The Physics of Mystics. And I'm just trying to figure out what physics has to say to mystical experiences of particularly of unity or not, or nothing at all. I mean, the spectrum's very broad there. I know you have a physics background, Kevin, so I speak with hesitation there, but
not at all. I want to make this like tenfold very clear. I did go to nuclear power school for a year when I was in the Navy, 6 months in Orlando, Florida, for the instruction and all the math and the thermodynamics, the water chemistry, all the different topics. And then I did 6 months hands-on in Idaho, and that certified me, and I passed the tests, and I became an engine room supervisor. I actually started up and shut down the reactor under my command. One time I went to the bridge of the nuclear cruiser was on, and I'm the guy that was on the headset talking to the captain, putting messages down to the engine room. And so I was a nuclear engineer, but that doesn't mean I'm Roger Penrose or anything. I don't have a degree, That's an interesting thing. I'm an engineer, like a train engineer. So right. I know just enough physics to be really dangerous.
Right, but you can speak physics, and I see Mike's T-shirt. I mean, he's got the planets on his T-shirt. I mean, that's a perfect example. And then,
no, those are mushrooms, really.
He's got volume 2, which is biology, and volume 1, which is on physics and astronomy, all on one T-shirt.
I took physics for poets in college, and
They
I
have a
did take
class
some.
like that? Really?
Yeah, yeah. It's sort of you're looking at the ideas of physics, so you're not really doing the mathematics. You know, that was one class. That was a class that you could take. It was great.
That's
I
really
mean,
what this is. That's what this is, Mike.
huh,
It's really physics for mystics, really, or instead of. But poets and mystics are so
right,
close.
exactly. I mean,
You know
Blake
what's so
says nature is imagination. You know, I mean, he's what a cosmologist he is. You know,
well,
Yeah.
he wasn't your standard Yogi Bear at all there. He was quite something, that guy. But yeah, what's so interesting about science for me is that it makes a great metaphor for things.
Yeah.
And it really does. It really informs our language. It's also fascinating that science in general is a reaction to oppression from the past of when religion had tyrannical power. And so science is a reaction to that. But increasingly, science is getting more and more mystical. And, you know, I suppose somebody like, Sabine Hossenfelder or somebody like that would say, no, 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 that the pseudoscientists, are turning science into religion and metaphysics, and it shouldn't be that way. But yeah, it's really getting that way
yeah,
because science can't actually postulate much about things before the quote Big Bang, if you think that's a appropriate theory. But they have to try. It's like, unless they can build a collider the size of the solar system, they're not going to advance science too much, except very incrementally. And 95% of the universe is missing. So science is quite the enigma. I mean, on the one hand, I mean, it's given humans powers that religion never could. And, very stable, reliable overall, unless you're like Paulie, who walked into a room and stuff blew up. Other people have that thing. Stable and reliable, but it's also turned into a bit of a death trap. You know, we're cooking our planet. 150 species are dying a day due to science. It's true. So it's both a blessing and a curse, and it's let us see the universe, but it's also taken away vision that human beings had for thousands of years because
well,
science is the new religion. It's a
what's
counter
interesting
religion.
though, Kev, is and Jeff. I mean, I don't know what you think about this, but you read Schrodinger, nearly, I guess, 100 years ago at this point, and he's extremely mystical. The quantum physicists, some of them are very mystical, and it seems like mainstream science hasn't caught up to them.
Well, one of the arguments of it's not an argument, it's just an observation of this first volume is that this turn to mystical literature actually goes back to the founding quantum physicists.
Right.
It's not a countercultural move. It's actually a move that was made in the 1920s, and
Mm-hmm.
people like Schrodinger, but also, people like Bohr, people like
Mm-hmm.
like Einstein. They saw instantly that the people who knew or had the best metaphors to talk about the quantum realm or the physics realm were people like Spinoza and the Upanishads and the Sufis. I mean, they knew that instantly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really one of the conclusions of the book is that it's actually the physicists who invented this whole turn to mystical literature. It's not countercultural actors who came much later and who were following up on the physicists.
Right.
The other thing that's like really interesting to me is that Kevin referred to it. I grew up with this God in the gaps. That God was just in the gaps of our rationality and of our science, and that gap was closing very quickly, and therefore God was disappearing. And suddenly, with dark matter or dark energy, now we know 5% of the entire universe, and 95% is missing. So the gap just got like huge, like
Right.
instantly. And so that makes me laugh, actually, the kind of really arrogance of that scientific and materialist worldview. And, you know, a lot of these volumes are dedicated to science fiction as the place where a lot of this reflection takes place. And, you know, most people would place Mary Shelley's Frankenstein as one of the first science fiction novels, and it's a dire, dire warning about science. It's not a celebration of science, it's a dire warning about it. And I think that's seldom heeded today. You know, everything is STEM, STEM, STEM. Science is great, mathematics is great, and of course it can do all kinds of wonderful things, but it's also killing us. And I think that's a hard message to cross, you know, particularly a non-scientist like myself, because it's just heard as anti-science when it's not. It's not anti-science at all. It's an observation. It's obvious.
Yeah, absolutely. I love science actually. It's attitudes about science I don't necessarily like.
Well, you know, Kevin, so somebody like Einstein, he loved Spinoza.
So do I.
He talked about Spinoza endlessly. But what he never knew about Spinoza was that Spinoza was really mystically inclined and was completely committed to this view of it's natura or deus. It's not just natura. It's not just nature. It's nature or God. God or nature, not one or the other. And people want to slice off or chop off that deus part, and they only want to talk about the natura part. And so, you know, Einstein Spinoza is a shell in some ways of the actual Spinoza, who's much more interesting to me than the determinism, or kind of the cosmic determinism that Einstein proposed. You know,
right. The thing I like to talk about in terms of science is an artifact of the left brain hemisphere. And since it has ascendancy, it's browned out. The right brain hemisphere and what I call the third brain, the enteric nervous system, the nerve cells in the gut, which are 20% of all nerve cells in the body. So humans actually have three brains and we're only using one of them. And it's no wonder we're killing ourselves and the planet. We're firing on one of three cylinders.
Yeah. I mean, obviously that hemispherical or that brain model is really powerful, but again, it's just rejected by the people who are in the left hemisphere. You know,
well, of course,
they're going to just reject it. So, but of course,
it's no different. It's no different than the Catholic Church, because originally everything had to be in Latin and couldn't be printed, so that regular people couldn't understand, you know, what the Bible said. So that the only interpreters were those who spoke Latin and didn't write anything down. So science is like that in many ways, because even a lot of top scientists don't really understand some of the stratospheric heights of science. So we take a great deal on, the average person takes an enormous amount on faith with science, and they go, well, trust us, we got a handle on everything, and no, don't worry your pretty little head, you know. And yeah, it's just watch the world burn with us, and we promise we'll seed the atmosphere or something. We'll bring in cats to get the rats, and the dogs to get the cats, and
right. The challenge is that we just know so much more today. I mean, the math works. That's the challenge, and
it does.
It just works, and so there's a practicality to it that's really powerful. And then these other things come in on the side, or with the math, I guess. They're not on the side, and that's what we're struggling with, or at least that's what I'm struggling with in this first volume. Is that?
I'm sorry, Jeff.
Well, there's also the question of whether certain kinds of physics have anything to do with mystical experience. You know, I mean, you know, some people come out of this a dualist or an idealist and think that the physics just really is about the material world and that reality isn't material. So, I mean, that's another option here that I think is really powerful and really common in the contemporary literature. Actually, it kind of moved to a kind of panpsychism or even idealism.
And perhaps, and I've been thinking about this too, is that what we define, what we call science, doesn't yet include some of these, psi capabilities.
No.
Maybe these things, when they fold into whatever future science becomes, that it'll be different. I think science is a tool. It doesn't teach you how to love. It doesn't teach you how to work with people. And the other thing that we haven't mentioned here is capitalism and the power,
goodness.
which and not to go down a kind of negative alley, but the power that that capitalism harnesses in science in all of its practical ways, to make it become way bigger than anything, like Heidegger, said in Questions Concerning Technology. It's just only God can help us now, not to get negative, but just it's that aspect. Look what's happening in the world today with our leaders that are making moves from a purely technological perspective and really focused on making money only without consideration.
And the question is, how could you even conceive of a world without capitalism? I mean, that's the challenge. And all of our models, certainly, national growth and jobs and income and healthcare, all this stuff, it's all premised on a capitalistic system.
It could be tempered too, though.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be sprawling and out of control. And I'm not poo-pooing the idea of making a living. I mean, I do it. It's the idea, the notion of civic responsibility and accountability.
Yeah.
On a personal and community level.
Yeah.
And there's a concept I've been talking about since I was a child. Because I thought about this stuff when I was a child. There's an element of alpha predator within the human species, the top humans that can get the most done to impose their will on everyone else. It's always from the very beginning of time, since the first chimp-like creature bashed his buddy over the head to take his coconut. Those that are willing to bash other humans over the head to get what they want, they're the alphas, and they keep the rest of us cowed so that we transfer our resources to them. And that's, of course, what's going on right now.
It's the opening scene to 2001. And that bone gets thrust into the air and becomes a satellite, space station. Yeah. With, by the way, with symphonic music associated. So go figure.
Yep.
Yeah, the basic human has become devalued. The robber barons are valued because they make themselves and others money. But to be a basic human, to have innate worth, value, and beauty, that has been completely thrown out the window. It's just not a thing anymore. And that is sad.
It's a thing for us individually, I think, and we have to never lose sight of that. And I think it's important to be hopeful and to propagate love in our lives. And I mean, Jeff, you're a grandfather, and I'm sure you're a great grandfather. We all have these responsibilities of care and kindness to the people around us, and that can't be undervalued.
Well, I think that's
you're singing to the choir. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah,
I know.
I think that is the secret, is how not to get into the gutter, as it were, with any of these things, but to offer some vision of hope or even cosmic hope that is very much against the grain, but also to do it reasonably and to do it on the terms of, and what we were talking about earlier, the sciences. I mean, if you offer a scientific perspective or a perspective that is scientific but is also cosmic or hopeful, then that's a profoundly countercultural thing to do, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But that's certainly what these books are about, to kind of take it back to the beginning. And I think it's what all three of us are about in our own lives, is just trying to offer that vision. I mean,
Yeah.
you're a little guy in the middle of the planets there. He's got a mushroom on his head, you know? I mean, come on. I mean, he is a mushroom. He is a mushroom.
Yeah. I have another one that's there's a mushroom and it's a kind of UFO mushroom, and there's a kind of
Yeah.
extraterrestrial being beamed up into it. Um,
That's very Eric Davis.
yeah, it's here's another image of
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, not that I'm espousing. I mean, Kevin and I call each other fungal brothers. We're webbed together mycorrhizally, if that could be used that way. Um, but I think I was reading Schrodinger's What is Life, I think.
Yeah.
And I read that 20 years ago, and I picked it up to read it again for research I was doing. And man, it's like he's reciting the Vedanta.
Yeah,
You
well, he
know,
is. He is.
yeah, he is. Yeah, he
I mean, he
refers to
really
it.
read it too,
Yeah.
actually. I mean,
But
I
what
have this
gets me,
whole
Jeff,
section.
if
What's
I
that?
can, what gets me, Jeff, is why does mainstream and why does that get pushed aside? I mean, your book is about that,
Yeah,
but
that's what the book is about. And it does get pushed aside. And what happens in the 20th century is, the phrase in the physics community was shut up and calculate. In other words, don't think about the philosophical implications, which is what Schrodinger was doing.
right,
It's just focus on the math and build the bombs. And of
right.
course, they built the bombs. And this is our world now. And it's a very fragile, very dangerous world because we shut up and calculated. That,
Hmm.
but that literally was the phrase in the 20th century. And the physicists who objected to that were basically all out of work and became the hippies of the counterculture. And they were the ones who were fighting against exactly that anti-philosophical point of view. And by the way, they were really interested in psi,
Mm.
in parapsychological experiences too, because they felt, as people have said for 120 years now, that there was something about physics that needed to be changed to embrace these. And again, this is what these trilogy is about. It's what does the universe have to look like scientifically to make, say, precognitive dreaming possible? That you really are led to a particular cosmology or a particular physics through common human experience. But you have to acknowledge that that common human experience actually happens and that it actually means something, that it's pointing us to that. And it's not just random, it's not just bullshit, as it were. So
Hmm.
that's what I think happened is the Cold War happened, actually. That's really the answer to your question.
Mm.
Um, and we're suffering tremendously from it still.
And it got, that phrase got translated in technology as "shut up and type." So that became, and when I was coming up, I've done technology, professionally most of my life
Yep.
in some form, and that was kind of, just put your head down,
You know,
get
the
rid of the metaphysics.
the other thing that people don't realize, this is the third volume in the series that I'm writing, but the UFO as a topic, it comes about almost exactly when the CIA and the intelligence community are created. And so it is very much a part of this Cold War kind of fear narrative, this disinformation campaign. And that we can't even get our heads around that. It's like capitalism. It's so much in the water, and that we're the fish in the water that we can't even see the water we're swimming in. But that's the
Mhm.
water we're swimming in. And that's what I'm trying to tease out in this trilogy is, well, what are these narrative elements that are so assumed and so basic? And it's not that the UFO is basic, but certainly the Cold War narrative is basic. The capitalism is basic. The science is basic.
Mhm.
Or
I think,
really, the UFO. Pardon me. The UFO is deeply entangled with deception on all levels, and it's one of my favorite topics because I mean, Roswell say so. Something happened. Nobody knows what, right? I mean, I've read credible reports that some of the magic material from Roswell was ducky paper for shelves and balsa wood and such like that, and that it was all just a massive conspiracy. Um, and I'm just saying that deception was a major element from day one. And before Roswell, there were the Swedish, I believe they were Swedish ghost rockets, and that was a deception campaign. You can read about it. There's a memo from the CIA. Well, what became the CIA, OSI, whatever at the time. So deception is a huge element of UFOs on a human level. But then whatever actually is there has its own layer of deception. The so-called UFO entities, they've got a layer of deception. And then behind the UFO entities, I mean, now we're talking my world here of Platonic surrealism. The consciousness itself is a layer of deception. Where the one deceives itself that it is the many, so that it isn't alone. So deception is baked into the laws of physics and reality and consciousness, and it is perfected with UFOs. It's like a quadruple entendre of deception on that topic. It's very fascinating.
Why do you think, Kevin? I mean, it's really a question. It's a metaphysical question. Why do you think reality is so deceptive? I mean, of course I agree with you. I think that's absolutely right. And I think the big mistake people make when they think about the UFO is they only think of human agency. They don't think of the agency of the phenomenon, which is itself is deceptive as well. But why is it deceptive? I guess is the question. Why do we need to be fooled? And I think I know your answer, but I want to hear it anyway.
Yeah, if we weren't fooled, nothing would exist. In Platonic surrealism, no.
I know
Platonic let me speak, please. You asked the question, you're going to get the answer. In Platonic surrealism, there's the vast cloud of potentials, unexpressed potentials. And it's all one thing. It's all one field of potential. But nothing actually exists in that state. You need a little bit of an instability to form kind of a chain reaction. And then you start getting living beings. You start getting laws of physics. Laws of physics are an emergent property. They're not fundamental. Yeah.
I mean,
But Jeff, why does it? Another question is to that is, why does it have to make sense? And I mean, there have been metaphysical ideas that have been more attuned to, say, nature, and to there have been nature-based cultures. There are still, and not to say that they get everything right, but they're not hypnotized by the purely by capitalism.
Right. I don't know. I just get asked. I mean, it's a question, and I definitely knew Kevin's answer that deception's metaphysical and that it's necessary to existence itself. That is an answer. That's a definite answer. I don't know. Why do things need to make sense? That's
they don't. They don't need to make sense.
That's a deeper.
For example, yeah. People, there's like people who say they're channelers, whatever, and when they try to channel physics, they always make a fool of themselves. Right. And even though they're talking to, Lord Harumpus in the funny hat from the 11th dimension in the Zetar fleet, these people never actually know any physics, and they can't explain anything about anything. They just give platitudes.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that the channelers are lying or the what?
Seances, Kevin. In the 19th century, it was a lot of platitudes, and then it was this real stuff or this empirically accurate stuff mixed in with the platitudes.
Of course.
Well, we some things do make sense, though. I mean, there are lots of things that make sense. I think accepting deliteralization is, I don't know, it's a sort of a maturity of species, and I'm not claiming to be on the mature side, but this acceptance of incompleteness.
Well, so that's an answer. See, to me, that's this idea that things don't need to make sense. It's a profoundly non-scientific answer, by the way, because of the physicists, at least I read, they do assume that everything makes sense and that can be mathematized and quantified and put into a formula, and that it's somehow symmetrical, even in a beautiful way. So to say that something is not sensible or not rational, I personally like that. I like that answer, but it's definitely another answer, that is
Sure.
one of the physicists for sure.
How many people have written songs about um, why the world why the world makes sense?
Right.
I mean, why do fools fall in love? It's,
What are you,
it's.
Elvis Presley now? Oh,
Do you
Well,
know
it's
do you
funny
know
you
this,
asked that.
do you know this
Kevin.
book called The World is Weird?
I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
think I
yeah, you
know it.
gotta look it up. You gotta look it up. It's by this philosopher whose name is very German sounding name. I can't think of it now, but it's basically makes this argument that the world is fundamentally weird in the philosophical sense now, that it not only doesn't make sense, but it can't make sense.
Mm.
right. Absurdism. Actually, Platonic surrealism has a, I don't know if I've ever written about it yet, but Platonic surrealism is really big on concurrency and viewing, reality and being and ontology and theology and all this stuff, epistemology. It's a palette so that awareness through potentiality, which makes consciousness, can experience everything and anything. So the thing about concurrency is, for example, we don't all necessarily live in the same world. Now, people always roll their eyes when you say that. But what I'm saying is, things are set up from what I see so that everybody can get something different out of it. And sure, the laws of physics are a thing, and they're the internal consistency of a particular story that people want to be involved in. Um, but other people don't follow those rules necessarily. I mean, look at in They Flew, the Saints, they didn't seem to care about any of those rules, and they were optional for them.
Right.
I don't think that's the name of the book, by the way. I just looked it up. When you get a chance, Jeff, maybe you can share that. I looked it up on Amazon. It didn't seem to appear.
Oh, the world is weird. Or here, let me just get it. It's right here. Hold on. It's Eric Schwitzgebel, The Weirdness of the World.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
It's actually wonderful, and it starts out with this basic argument.
I see it.
Yeah.
The thing I really like about concurrency is it drives scientists and mystics both crazy, and they both need to get off their high horse, including me. Well, I'm not on a horse. I'm down in the turds. You know that. Yeah, that's why I like the mushrooms. Because when I was a kid, the cow turds often had mushrooms growing out of them. So, I was kicked down in the dirt, when I was young, and the mushrooms and I were friends. We were both on the same level. The thing about concurrency that's so useful as a concept is that you can have an object that is a nuts and bolts UFO, say. It's also a psychopomp that's going to ferry dream substance off to the afterlife because somebody died. It's also somebody's dead relative. It could be 100 different things at once. Humans have this either or thinking. Well, it's either rational or it's irrational. It's either science or it's spiritual. And of course, none of that is true.
Yeah.
Not even remotely. And that's what we're going to find out. Science will too.
Well, that's going to be a hard lesson, I think.
It sure will.
Yeah.
It sure will.
Well, maybe that's a good place to stop, and Jeff can go back to his very important duties of doing the right thing.
Yeah, there's a
My
3-year downstairs for sure.
Yeah, I have my 13-year-old coming home just shortly, Jeff, who's he's now a couple inches taller than me, and he
Yeah,
really he's wanting to wrestle me and stuff like that. So I have
Oh,
to oblige
goodness.
him. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, no, it's kind of fun though, actually, is but he's probably gonna break my wrist.
yeah,
I'm just trying to I'm trying to indulge him to give him what he wants, which is I don't just to knock around and have some fun with someone who loves him and won't hurt him basically.
yeah. I was in wrestling when I was in junior high, and it was sort of like that. Only it was a little more serious. I mean,
Oh
people,
yeah.
people were trying to hurt you.
Well,
I got put into a sleeper hold one time where they put your nostrils up their armpit and you suffocate, and so you just have to lay there and they call it.
yeah, yeah. Well, Jeff, my brother was a wrestler, and I do like mixed martial arts to stay in shape now, so I'm not very good at it, but um, uh, he was very good, my brother, and so consequently, I'm pretty good.
Good, good, good.
Uh, but anyway, well, guys, it's so great to hear you and in some cases see you. But
Yeah.
it's been really great talking to both of you guys.
All right. All right. Well, you both of you have a good day, and we'll talk later.
Thank you. Thank you for
Take
your
care.
time, gentlemen. Take
All right.
care. Bye bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye
Bye.
bye. Bye bye.